Hey, it's Andrew Huang, and it's just one of those days where I feel the weight of all of my unfinished music ideas, all my little music babies that I've been neglecting, and I just want to make some progress on some of these tracks that have been lying around for years. I've picked out 3 track ideas that, as you'll see, are in the very beginning stages, and I thought I could just make this video showing you how I develop my musical ideas from something little into something much more developed. Let's go! So here is our first project, and this is something that I do sometimes that's really silly, but I'll just make a sound, and then for whatever reason I'll be like, okay, I'm done. I was so productive. So that's the first lesson of today, is work on your ideas until you absolutely can't anymore. It's much tougher if you stop working on something and then you're coming back to it and have to get into the groove, get into the flow again. But it's not impossible, and that's exactly what we're doing today. We're building on our old ideas months or years after we first came up with them. So here's our first idea, and it's just a sound. It's a pretty cool sound. It's very evocative, but that's all I have. Actually, I'm interested to see what I did here to make this sound. I have a lot of effects going on. It's just a piano plugin. Let's see what this piano sounds like on its own. It sounds like a piano. So I'm just gonna play around with this sound until something inspires me. And maybe that's tip number 2 actually, is getting tactile with it. This is why having a MIDI controller of some kind can be really helpful. Clicking a mouse cursor around a screen is like the least inspiring way to make music, and I mean, it only lets you do one thing at a time. It's very removed from the actual feeling of crafting music. P.S. If it looks like my Ableton push isn't on, it's just that the lights are really dim because I'm bus powering it. Very dim, but it's on. I like that little beam graphic. All right, so now that I have a basic beat laid down, I'm just gonna focus on developing that for a bit. I want it to sound a bit more detailed, a bit more lively. So once again, I'm finding that I'm just biting Burial. But a track's gotta go where a track's gotta go, so why don't we add some low bass and rip some a cappella singing from YouTube. So I just searched for blues singing a cappella. I'm sorting by upload date so that we get a lot of videos with very few views. I'm sure we're gonna find a beautiful voice. There's so many talented humans out there posting stuff on YouTube. Let's see what we've got.
Hanging out on Monday. I won't convince you to love me.
So I have the beginning of a melody that I want to hear as this kind of chopped up vocal sample. It goes something like that. Something with that shape. So I'm gonna play around with pitch shifting some of these vocals to fit that, and then we'll develop it into a bit more of a melody.
Nobody knows.
This clip I'm using is called Harlem Blues a cappella. It's from someone named Emily Wesley. Emily, I hope you don't mind that I'm sampling this. Gonna link your channel below, so everyone, if you enjoy her voice, go send her some love. Let's chop her up. Yeah, that sounds bad. Feeling really good. Super solid progress on one track, just going from a sound and adding one layer at a time to build up a track. Let's look at another project now. We're gonna start with something that's just drums. Now again, I don't know what happened here. This project is just a drum beat. Maybe I just had an idea for a drum beat. Sometimes that happens. In a situation like this, my most common next step would be to add harmony. We already have this rhythmic element, we have kind of a vibe going. The next foundational element that's gonna push this idea along is probably a nice chord progression. And I'm gonna make things a little bit quicker today. I'm gonna use a plugin called Captain Chord from Mixed In Key. They approached me a while ago about doing a little sponsored segment, and this seems like a perfect spot for it. It's a really great writing tool. Let me show you what it's all about. So I'm just gonna drag Captain Chords to a fresh MIDI track, and you can choose what key you wanna work in. Let's go with E minor. And then all of the chords in that scale are available to you. I can also just play them from my keyboard. And underneath each chord are different voicing possibilities. So within the plugin, I can just make a chord progression by picking different chords. There's also this complexity knob that will add more notes to the chord. And there we go, just like that, by picking things half at random and half kind of based on how I respond to the vibes and flavors in there, we have a really nice chord progression. And there's a lot more you can do with it. You can change the timing of the chords by dragging the edges of them. Then there are also these menus where you can choose what your timing is like. Timing being when the chords change, and then there's rhythm, which is what rhythm you're playing the chords in. And you can change some of the other playing parameters like space, put some space in between each strike of the chord. We probably want some swing because our beat kind of swings. And then there's strum, which you can get extreme with. You can also change the sound. Captain Chords comes with a bunch of really good sounds. I find them sort of in the pop and EDM world. If you're wanting to use other sounds though, you can just take this clip where it says drag this clip to your DAW and drag it to your DAW. From there you can edit the MIDI if you want. You can take any of these notes and move them around. It's just a normal MIDI clip. And of course you can also replace the Captain Chords plugin at this point with any other plugin of your choosing, and that MIDI will then trigger your new plugin. I'm gonna back up a bit though, because I actually liked a simpler version of this chord progression. And I also like that first sound, that piano string sound. I was the kid who, when my mom took me shopping for new shoes, I would just want the first pair that I tried on. I get attached to things. I liked what we started with here. Sort of a massive attack vibe. One thing I didn't mention is that you don't have to choose your chords the way I did. You can also go through these 165 preset chord progressions. I know that some people's first response to this might be like, well, how much is it really a song that you wrote if you used a preset chord progression? To which I'll say the vast majority of songs out there are written with the same handful of chord progressions. To have this library accessible to you, it's a little bit like working with a band member. Like, they're gonna come up with things that you didn't come up with. You're making a song together. It's like having a keyboard player, except he doesn't steal money from you and smoke weed in your car. Chad. Okay, let's move on. Very solid, very fast progress coming from just that drum loop, so I'm gonna put that track on hold for now. Let's move on to our third and final project of the day. So this is kind of a weird one, but if we break it down, there's just two elements right now. There's weird sound effects, and there are these chords. And that's just looping over and over. So a few things that I immediately know I need. That loop needs to change to something else at some point. This is a chord element and it's really high up, so it's definitely calling out for some bass immediately. And of course, there's no percussion in here yet, so we're gonna wanna add some drums. Gonna jam around on push to see what else we can come up with that synth. Okay, we've got a nice synth variation we can switch to sometimes in this track. What did I say was gonna be next? Bass? So this synth line is a minor chord being moved all around, but I don't think I want the bass to be jumping all around like that and following every single chord. I'm gonna try something simpler so that some of these little tiny chords that only happen once just kind of act as flavor, but we'll really only feel one or two chord changes happening. Bass is done, let's move on to drums. I'm starting to go really fast now because it's 6:30. I want to get to some dinner today. But maybe this could also be another tip for this video, tip number whatever we're on now. Forcing yourself sometimes to work fast and just get ideas down is a great thing to do. You can always go back and edit something, but if you don't have anything there, there's nothing to work with. And you can sit there with your music software open and think about what you want to be doing, but it's so much better to just act. Act on the first thing that comes to mind. Whole bunch of quick decisions that I just made in a row. I wanted a 4-on-the-4 kind of feel, but I didn't want a normal 4-on-the-4 kick drum thing, so I just made it with claps. The kick drum is in the same rhythm as the bass, very common, but also every once in a while I just throw in a couple extra kick drums, just for funsies. And then I was really hearing a classic house open hi-hat thing with a 606 kit, so threw the 606 hat in there. And now I'm hearing this pitched up vocal melody, so I gotta think of some kind of lyrics. I'm gonna sing it really slow and then speed it up so my voice is all chipmunky, throw that on top, call it a day. I thought you know, baby. 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 I thought you know, baby.